I didn't feel them cutting me open. However, I felt the pressure of them rearranging my organs, and it felt like to the point where I could feel it. My great grandma had passed away. My great grandmother, who Carter was named after, she died on the day that Carter was born, probably about y'all, since I'm sitting here, let's go ahead and do my labor and delivery story time, because why the fuck not? I'm already pumping, I'm already recording. Oh, yes, you look good. So it all started on August 20. Well, I take that back. It started about August 21st, I believe. It was the week before August 26th. I was having lots of diarrhea. I was having headaches, migraines, and I didn't know if that was a sign of active labor, because at this point I was about 30. I was 37 weeks. Hey, sit down. I was 37 weeks, so I went, they took my blood pressure, they tested me for preeclampsia, they tested me for COVID, everything came back negative and normal, but they did notice there was a spike in my blood pressure, a little bit, so keep that in mind. So then, that following week, on August 25th, I remember out of nowhere, I just got these killer migraines. And it was on the left. At first, it started off as like a frontal, so it was across my entire forehead. And then I took some medication, just some ibuprofen, extra strength, and it turned into just on the left side of my forehead. But even with medication, the migraine didn't go away. So I called L&D. L&D told me to call my doctor. I was on the advice line. I gave him my symptoms. The doctor told me to go take some more medicine, get some rest, and then in the morning go to my physician, which worked out because I already had a standing appointment with my physician that Friday. Well, I'm not sure if it was that. I can't remember the dates off the top of my head, but I had a standing appointment on the 26th. So I did just that. I went in. They took my blood pressure. My blood pressure was elevated again. This was the second time in the past week that it was in the 140 range. So my OB was hold on. Remy, go to your crate. It was in the 140s, and this was the second time in the past week. So she was like, okay, your blood pressure is elevated, and then going over your file, your blood pressure was elevated the last time you went to the urgent care. I'm going to recommend that you go to the hospital right now, and I will call them to let them know that you are coming. So I was kind of upset because I did plan to give birth at Anne Arundel Medical, but they ended up going to Holy Cross. So woke up this morning still with a headache. Pain medicine's not working. Blood pressure was again elevated at 140. So now I am being sent to the hospital for a possible induction. I will see y'all there. I did that. I went home. My bags were already packed, so I just loaded everything into the car. I put my dogs in the crate. I texted her father and I went to go pick him up because he was at school, and from there we went to the hospital. So when I first get there, they send me to triage, and they're just checking me. They're checking my vitals. They're really just like prepping me to see if I qualify for an induction or what. And I was so scared, y'all. I was, in my mind, I knew that I was going home. I knew that I was like, they're gonna send your girl home. So the lady comes in, she's like, your blood pressure is high, but the second time she took it, it stabilized. However, because I had 2 high blood pressures within the past 6 hours, that had qualified me for an induction. So I was admitted, and I stayed in triage for hours. Like, y'all, when I tell you there were so many people giving birth that day, the 26th was real heavy in labor and delivery because they were backed the fuck up. So I went to triage. I think it was around 3 o'clock, maybe 4. I did not get admitted into my room until 8, 9 that night. So this was when I had went to my first room. And if you are interested in seeing my labor and delivery vlog, check it out right here. So the first room that I went to was the high risk ward, and we started the induction process at around 10:30, and they gave me a pill. The pill was to be taken every 12 hours, I believe, to soften my cervix. So I ate something, I took the pill, I was on bed rest, which was completely against my birth plan because I did not want to be bedridden. I wanted to walk around. I had planned to do this naturally. I wanted to walk around. I wanted to dance through my contractions. I wanted to be one with my motherfucking contractions, okay? And let me pause that, get my this break, and then we'll go right back at it. So yeah, I was really upset about that because I was confined to the bed. I was confined to the monitor because they had to make sure that my blood pressure was good, that baby's heart wasn't in distress. So yeah, so I think I probably spent about 3 days in that room because I was not going to be able to be transferred until I was dilated enough to go to labor and delivery. So they gave me the pill. The next day, there was still no change in my cervix. So then I took another dose. There was still no change. Basically, I had to take a pill every 4 or 8 hours. So it would equal out to a 12-hour time span. And by the time the 12 hours was up, no change. I was not dilated, but I was effaced about 50%, I think. So then they started the next intervention, which was the Pitocin, I want to say, but I cannot remember. So I was in the high risk ward for about 2 days, maybe. I left the high risk ward on the 28th and to go to labor and delivery because I was dilated 2 or 3 centimeters. I think I was dilated 3 centimeters when they transferred me, but I can't remember. Cervix checks. Yeah, I cried so hard. If y'all ever had a baby, then you know how these cervix checks feel. And if you haven't had a baby, these checks, they're different for everybody. So they can either be painful or they can be uncomfortable. For me, it was very painful because my doctors were not cognizant about how they were treating my body. Like, they didn't lube up if they did lube up, they didn't use enough. They didn't ease into me. They just jammed they shit in me. And then I started crying. I was crying for a lot of reasons. I was crying because I was in pain. The contractions was contracting. I was stuck to this bed. I was having back labor. It was so much. So when they told me that I still wasn't dilated enough, or I still hadn't dilated past like 2 centimeters, once they cervix checked me, I just cried. So when I got to labor and delivery, because like I told y'all, when they were giving me my cervix checks, I was crying because I was very emotional. The pain was unbearable at the moment. I was going through a lot emotionally. I still wasn't dilating. I'm stuck in the bed. I'm having back labor. It was rough, and it was a really rough experience. So I decided, because the Pitocin was making her heart rate dip twice, I decided to get the epidural so that they could insert the balloon catheter in me so that I could dilate some more. So that's what I ended up doing. The epidural experience wasn't that bad. I mean, I don't necessarily have a problem with needles. I will say the only thing that made it difficult was that they wanted me to position my body a certain way. Like, they wanted me to kind of like hunch my back and like lean forward as much as I could. But mind you, I'm like 9 months pregnant, so I don't know how much push you gonna get from me. But in the end, I got it. I was good. Definitely couldn't walk when I got the epidural. So then they inserted the catheter in me so that it would just empty my bladder and all that stuff. So overnight comes, they pump the balloons, and then bam, yada yada, da da da. And then the next day, we go do that shit overnight. The next day, they checked me again. I was 5 centimeters. So I was like, okay, progress. We're halfway there. So now they're like, okay, Ariel, we're gonna put you back on the Pitocin. I know I said earlier, I was foreshadowing earlier. So the first time they put me on the Pitocin, her heart rate dropped, and it wasn't a scary drop. This was the second time they put me on the Pitocin, and while I was on the Pitocin, her heart rate dropped, and apparently it had dropped to like a scary number because the nurses came in all frantic. So then they basically told me what was happening after it was over, but how she was stabilized, but how they were taking me off the Pitocin. So at this point, y'all, I have exhausted every intervention method that they offer. I've done the pill. That's what the second intervention was. So the first one was the pill. The second one was like a saline solution. Well, not saline. It was a solution that they squirted in me to like ripen my cervix. That was the second one. The third one was the Pitocin, and then the fourth one was the balloon catheter, and then I went back to the Pitocin. But the Pitocin was making my heart rate dip. Was making her heart rate dip. So at that moment, I had decided, I was like, you know what, y'all, I have been in labor at this point for 4 days. We have exhausted every single intervention that you all have given me. And the Pitocin keeps on making her heart rate drop. I do not want to risk her heart rate dropping again if you put me on the Pitocin. So I went and I decided to have an elective C-section because I knew in my mind that's where we were going anyway. Because I'm not dilating on my own because she wasn't ready to come. The induction interventions, they're not working. So, yeah. So, y'all, I was kind of upset because I really thought that the moment I said I want a C-section, they was gonna prep me and be like, all right, let's get this baby out. Hell no. Like I mentioned, there were so many women giving birth that day, and there was 3 emergency C-sections in front of me. So it was the 29th around 12 or 3 o'clock when I decided to have a C-section. I was pissed, number one, because the moment I decided to have a C-section, they would not give me any water. And I know it's protocol, and I know my body needed to be empty, but y'all, I already hadn't been eating because I was throwing up. So now you mean tell me I can't drink water? Oh, I was so upset. My mouth was so dry. My lips were so dry. My lips were just so chapped. I felt so dehydrated, even though I was on an IV. But you know, it's different when you're getting fluid through your arm versus getting fluid through your mouth. So that was that. And like I said, it was around 3 o'clock. They did not get to me until midnight. Because at this point, it was officially the 30th. So they prepped me. I was so upset. My mama had to leave because the moment that I got out of surgery, they were transferring me to the maternity ward. And in the maternity ward, you can only have one person stay with you overnight. So because her dad was going in with us to, obviously, for the birth of his daughter, and it was after the library, it was after the hospital had closed, my mom had to leave. My mom ended up going back to North Carolina because, yeah. And then she ended up coming back the next. My mama was a trooper. She was on the road. When I tell y'all, when I texted her and said I'm getting induced, she was there by the time I woke up the next morning. And like I said, I'm from Southern Virginia. She lives in North Carolina, 5-6 hour drive. So shout out to my mama. I love that lady. So got prepped. They pushed a spinal epidural in me, and with the spinal, it numbs my body from my waist down, so I couldn't feel shit. And the reason why I do this is because, you know, I didn't feel them once I started the procedure. I didn't feel them cutting me open. However, I felt the pressure of them rearranging my organs, and it felt like to the point where I could feel the pain. I'm not sure if like I could feel it because I knew that it was happening or what, but when I tell y'all, I was like on that table, literally. I wasn't screaming, but I was like, ooh, like, it was a lot. It was a lot, and they really couldn't do nothing for me but tell me to like calm down. Bitch, I'm gonna calm down. My liver in your hand. You pushing my organs to the side, and you taking my shit. You doing like this to get my baby out. So once they got her out, they pushed me some more drugs, and that shit knockout. Like Nicki Minaj put that sleep. Now he calling me knockout. I was out, and I went out instantaneously. So after that, held my baby. This was her when she first came out the womb. She was not fucking with it. She was like, yo, it is ghetto up in here. Like, didn't I tell y'all I wasn't ready to come? Like, so why am I here? She was mad. She was so mad. So fast forward the next day, my mom was back. We're all in the next room, which is the maternity ward. I feel like there was a room before triage, but I cannot. No. Yes, I'm right. It was triage, high risk, labor, delivery, maternity. So now we're in the maternity ward. My mom, I'm holding the baby. I'm trying to breastfeed. My milk ain't coming in yet. So XYZ, everyone's bonding with her. Everything's going great. And then this is where shit hits the fan. So I was holding Carter, and I was in bed, and my mom was in the bathroom, And when my mom had came out the bathroom, I just looked at her and she just started crying. And I'm trying not to cry, y'all. And she didn't have to say what was going on because I already knew what had happened. My great grandma had passed away. My great grandmother, who Carter was named after, she died on the day that Carter was born, probably about 6-7 hours after she was born. And I just didn't expect it to happen this way. Like, her health started to decline when I found out that I was pregnant. And she had moved in with my grandmother, and my grandmother and my mama was taking care of her. And like right before I went to the hospital, my mama had told me, things aren't looking good for grandma. So like, if you can just call her, FaceTime her if you can, and just, talk to her. Because she said that at this point they were just making her comfortable. And when they told me I was getting induced, y'all, I'm not gonna lie, I was so happy. Because I was like, yo, I'm gonna get induced, I'm gonna have my baby, we're gonna go to Virginia, and my grandma and Carter is going to meet. Cause that's all I wanted, I wanted her to meet the person that she was named after. And like, she died before we had a chance to do it. So it was hard. I'm still very impacted by it, as you can see. So yeah, to make things worse, nurse comes in and she's telling me that because me and Carter have different blood types, I'm O positive, she was A, like her father, that Carter's liver was underdeveloped and it wasn't kicking in as fast as they thought it would, primarily because of our different blood types, and her bilirubin levels were rising. This is the definition for bilirubin because I can't remember off the top of my head. So at this point, baby girl now has to receive phototherapy for jaundice, and this is how she looked under the lights. We had to do everything under those lights. When she was 12, she was literally 12 hours old. Maybe not even 12, when we had to stop skin, we had to stop all of this stuff, and we had to put her under the lights for phototherapy. We had to do everything under the lights. We had to change her, feed her, all that stuff. And I was only allowed to hold her for 15 minutes, and then I had to put her back. And it was hard. It was hard as hell. But, we did it, and we did it diligently, and sometimes I didn't hold her for my 15 minutes because I wanted her to stay under the lights and soak up as much light as she could so that we can go home. We could be in Virginia, we can grieve, and we can celebrate all at the same time. Because the birth of my daughter is always going to be a grievance of my grandmother. And it sucks that it had to happen that way. But that's not how things worked out. Every time they would test her rebound levels, her levels were peaking, and they would drop, and then they would peak. They would drop, and we take her off the lights for a day, and then they come back and be like, "I'm so sorry, the levels are back up." So this was ongoing for about 4 days. Because I was able to stay in the maternity ward for about 4 days, and then once the 5th day hit, we had to be transferred to pediatrics. Because at that point, there's nothing wrong with me anymore. My blood pressure is stabilized. My blood pressure was still a little high, but my insurance only covered like 4 days in the hospital. So that was why I wasn't the patient anymore. So we had to go to pediatric, and it sucks. Because, it was kind of like a blessing in disguise, because she was supposed to get discharged because her levels had went down, but my blood pressure had went up, and it was high up. It was like 170, and that's like stroke area. So they kept me to monitor my blood pressure, put me on blood pressure pills. And then that next day, her levels had spiked again. So it was like a blessing and a curse, because if bilirubin levels, they affect the brain, which is why they were so diligent about getting her levels down before we went home, because they didn't want her Rubens to spread to her brain, because that can be fatal. So we went to pediatric. My mom went back home to North Carolina. Her dad had came back, and we spent the weekend. It was like Thursday night going on Friday. We had spent the weekend. At this point, it is September 3rd. So I was in the hospital from August 26th to now September 3rd. So we're up there, we're good. They're checking her. At this point, my hopes are down. I'm prepared to stay the weekend. I'm prepared to spend Labor Day weekend in the hospital, because every time I get my hopes up, we have to stay. So I just did. I fed her. I held her. I did what I was supposed to do. Yeah, I did. I followed mom and all that stuff. So after the next day, they tested her rebound levels, and I was in the bathroom at the time. And while I was in the bathroom, they had tested her, and they had came back with the results. And her dad was just like, he came to the door and was like, "Did you hear what the nurse said?" And I said, "No." Like, I was so defeated. I was like, "We gotta stay, don't we?" And he was like, "No, we're going home." And I was like, "We're going home."
Tell them the good news. We're going home. We're going home, the babies.
September 4th, we finally made our way home. So I altogether spent 10 days in the hospital. She spent 5 days in the hospital, and we finally came home. We introduced her to our dogs, well, my dogs, and yeah, it was
down.
Kenny! He was finna tear up my goddamn laptop charger. So yeah, y'all. And that was it. That's the labor and delivery story. Man, it was an experience, and it's one I'll never forget. And I think the best thing to come out of this is, well, it's not the best thing. When I look at my daughter, all I see is my grandma. She acts just like her. She's stubborn just like her. I got these pictures when she was just born, and she was looking at me like, "Get that camera out my damn face." And my grandmother hated taking pictures. So she's so funny. She has so much personality. She's now 2 months. She's not here right now. She's actually with my mom in Virginia. But this is her and her 2-month pictures. This is oh my goodness, that's my baby, and I love her so much. And yeah, y'all. So that's it. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. I am going to break it up. So I'm doing my pump test right now, because I was going to do my pump test and tell you the story, but the video is long. So I am just going to chop it up, and I will talk to y'all next time. All right, bye. Don't forget to watch my labor and delivery today. Okay, y'all. So I'm out of this. I gotta go to work, but I will talk to you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.